Good morning again. Good morning to everyone who is joining in. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. You're very, very much welcome to today's event. Let me start with introducing myself. I am Loretta Malaka. I'm the Program Manager for the First Leadership Academy, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the March edition of our Executive Roundtable, which is a special edition in celebration of the International Women's Day. And at this point, I also want to recognize everyone who has attended, especially our speakers and our keynote speakers and panelists for today's event. We have here, okay, I can see Mrs. Aziz Atinuke, also from the Office of the Head of Civil Service. You're very much welcome, Ma. And I know that the Permanent Secretary Service Delivery Office joined at some point and stepped out. So we're expecting her to join in again. We also have our facilitators. We have Ambassador Sonia Lana. You're very much welcome, Ma. We have Mrs. Uche Lotana Anajemba. You're very much welcome. I understand you were not feeling so well yesterday, but you were able to join in today. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you very much, Ma. And we have Mrs. Atinike Obikoya as well, who would be speaking to the topic of leadership. You're very much welcome. And to our consistent participants, I want to say thank you for joining in. And for those of you that are joining in for the first time, it's a pleasure to have you join us today. Today's conversation promises to be very insightful and engaging, and I'm open and looking forward to the questions and to the conversations that we would have today. And I'm very, very positive that we'll leave here with action points to improve our company culture and also to develop ourselves personally as women, to position ourselves to be leaders in our organizations, in our businesses, in our offices as well. So at this point, I would quickly run through the meeting rules. This meeting will be observed under the Chatham House rules, and this means that participants are free to use the information received, but neither the identity nor the affiliation of the speakers nor that of the participants may be revealed. Please, if you're joining in, gladly I can see that everyone that has joined in so far has joined in with their full names, and that is very important. Thank you so much. It would allow us to be able to engage properly. So please maintain your names as your Zoom name for now. And if you'd like to change probably to a full name, because I can still see some names are not exactly full names, you can just click on the button. You can go to the participant section of the Zoom platform, click on the more icon on your name and click on rename. So that way you can put in your full name as your Zoom name. To speak during this session, because as I said earlier, it is going to be a very engaging session. So if you want to share your insights, your contributions, ask questions, you can kindly click the reaction tab to raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or you can use the chat box to type in your questions instead. So you can do that. And once your question has been taken or you've made your comment, you can click on that same reaction tab to drop your hands after speaking. Then always remember to mute your speakers so that your background, the background noise doesn't disturb the conversation that we'll be having today. So that is the rules for today to ensure a very smooth and engaging conversation. After today's event, the link to the replay would be sent to your emails. So look forward to that so that you can, replay the conversation and have time to meditate and ponder on the conversations that we're having today. All right, okay. Good morning, Mar, Mrs. Atinuke Aziz Margaret. All right, sir. All right. Good morning, Ma. So I'm aware that you'll be taking the keynote address. All right, Ma. Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ma. Yes, sir. Okay, so today's event, as our webinars go, it's a 90-minute conversation. And shortly after this, my welcome speech and introduction, we'll go ahead to, I would invite the GMD of the TFS Consulting Group to give his opening remarks, and then I would be inviting Mrs. Aziz to give the keynote address. On behalf of the head of the civil service, Dr. Folashade Yemieson. And then we'll move straight on into the conversation for today, starting off with staying the leadership cause that will be led by Mrs. Atinuke Obikoya, who is a leadership and performance coach. Should be sharing, highlighting ways that female leaders have positively influenced corporate performance, and should also provide insight into what it takes, to stay the leadership cause. And after her session, there's going to be a Q&A. So please have your notepads by your side, take notes. Any questions that you have in mind, please put them down so that this is the point where she would answer any questions that you might have. And then after that session, we'll go on to a panel session with Ambassador Sonia Alana, a corporate ethics and etiquette coach, and Mrs. Uche Lutana Najemba, who is a human capital consultant and business strategist, who will take the session on organizational culture and women's growth. So how does the culture of an organization, how does it help or hinder women? How can it help them or to ascend senior management roles? So we hope that we have more HR leads. I know I identified some HR leads in this meeting. So I believe that from this conversation, steps and ways that you can begin to improve the culture of your organization. You pay more attention to what your culture is currently. Is it helping women or is it stifling women to, break through whatever concrete walls or concrete ceilings ahead of them to reach on to senior management roles? And we'll take questions also. Even as the panel sessions, at some point, it will be opened up to the audience, and you can ask your questions, whatever you may have, and then we would end the webinar. So at this point, I'll just do a brief. Okay, I want to also welcome everyone who has joined. I'll go through the rules again, but before then, I would want to identify the permanent secretary. She has joined back us again, the Special Delivery Office. You're very much welcome. We have Mrs. Ebian Roberts here. You're very much welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. Okay, so for some people who have joined in, some participants who have joined in, I can still see Mrs. iPhone. If to change, would like you to have your name. So to do that, kindly go to the participants tab of the Zoom platform. You click on that, you click on the more icon on your name. You look for your name on the participant list, and then you click on the more icon and click on rename. That way you can type in your full name instead of having the name of your phone showing on the platform. So thank you. Mercy Ameshilola, you're very much welcome. Thank you for renaming. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome the GMD of the TFS Consulting Group, Dr. Oluwalasade, to give his welcome notes.
Thank you very much, Loretta. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to see many of us being able to join on this very important, significant issue. My remark really is just to thank you for being part of the conversation. Just a couple of days ago, we heard the news about Madeleine Albright's death, very first Secretary of State in the US, a woman that has done a lot to break boundaries, and she wasn't the first one Jane Austen in 1775, Rosa Parks in 1913, and many more after them. And Margaret Thatcher in the UK, Christine Lagarde is still there in EU, and we have our very own head of service here. And many women who have had to work hard, sometimes work twice as hard as one would expect a man in of their equivalent to work. And that is a prejudice or bias or lack of equity that we are trying to address. Celebrating International Women's Day or Month is not just about appreciating women, it's about doing something to address the imbalance. I want to appreciate you all for joining, permanent secretaries who are joining the leaders, especially the kind support that we continually receive from the head of service of the Federation, Dr. Falashade Yemi-Son, who strongly believes, as well as many women, I'm sure, in the country, in that breaking bias against women, especially in the case and the context of this webinar in leadership. So it's not just about having many women, it's about having them at that place of authority. The speakers today who have kindly volunteered their time are free of charge to be part of this conversation. Again, our friends of the house who continually support the work we do. Ambassador Sonia Lana, just want to appreciate you. Thank you also for being part of that. Tinuke, fantastic woman and consultant. And then Uche, I understand that it's been a little bit under the weather, but still managed to put the extra energy to be with us this morning. I think you need to be celebrated, but we need to do more. So it's not just about yourselves and the people that we know, the PAMSEC, the Director, Learning and Development, who's going to speak for the head of service this morning, but it's about the many young girls who need to have their own way and do not have to struggle or do twice as much to get to positions men get to. So I'm interested in listening to this debate. I'm just a listener today. I want to sort of learn and see how we could get that pipeline in place, what we could do in our different perspectives, and get that conversations to the very, very top. So thank you very much once again. And those of you who've joined, who've been able to join, I've seen a few names very familiar with. And let me just leave it there and introduce or invite to give us a keynote on behalf of the Head of Service of the Federation, Dr. Falashade Yemi-Son, the Director for Learning and Development from the Office of the Head of Service. I just hand over to you. Thank you so much for coming and have a fantastic program this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm Director, Leadership Management and Succession Planning.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Aziz A. Margaret. Yeah, Leadership Management and Succession Planning. Aziz A. Margaret. I'm reading the keynote address on behalf of the Head of Service of the Federation, Dr. Mrs. Falashade Yemi-Son, at this great occasion. I'll have to observe the protocol because I can see my Permanent Secretary is online, Permanent Secretary Special Duties Office Mark, dynamic executives in various fields, all participants here present. I'll be reading the keynote address of Dr. Mrs. Falashade Yemi-Son at this executive roundtable. Thank you very much. The address goes thus. I deem it a great honor to be invited to this auspicious occasion as a keynote speaker on this special edition of the Executive Roundtable dedicated to celebrating the 2022 International Women's Day. I'd like to begin by sincerely congratulating the organizers of this event for championing the advancement of women at their various workplaces. both in the public and private sectors in the country. This leadership executive discussion has come at no better time than this. International Women's Day is about celebrating the accomplishments of women. Even better, it is a great day to assess how government various policies can further improve its efforts for gender equity at all levels in the public and private sectors. There is no doubt that President Muhammad Buhari's led administration is sensitive to the quest for gender equality. Appointment of women as ministers to some vital ministries as finance, budget and national planning, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Ministry of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Minister of State for Environment were made by this administration. Other positions given to women include that of the Minister of State for Transportation, Minister of State for the Federal Capital Territory, and presently the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, and Chief and Chair Federal Character Commission. And on the international platform, there are positions which include the of former Minister of Environment, as United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, Fatima Mohammed Kiari as African Union Permanent Observer to the United Nations, and the newly elected Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has seen as tremendous achievements that cannot be oversized. This is just to mention just a few. We are aware that despite this growth of women occupying some management positions around the globe, it becomes pertinent to note that this achievement is far away from the desired target. Throughout history, the central role played by women has ensured the stability, progress, and long-term development of nations. In the 21st century, the issues of gender balance and the need to accord women equal opportunities and allow them to achieve their full potentials in societies have gained more momentum globally. While some progress has been made to overcome impediments to their chances of contributing to development, a lot still needs to be done in the area of decision-making. According to the United Nations, investing in women and respecting their rights is the surest way to uplift communities, organizations, and countries, as well as achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Thus, the involvement of women in nation building is an inalienable right, as well as inescapable reality for holistic and comprehensive political, economic, and social advancement in the modern world. Over time, some women who have been entrusted with leading roles to manage human and material resources have more often than not proved that given adequate backing, they can perform credibly. Indeed, the 21st century has bettered the long-awaited desire of women to be in the corridors of power, to be vocal about their needs, and to execute their dreams by contributing their quota to national development. Meanwhile, research from World Economic Forum underlies this. With the global gender parity in which Nigeria is not included, the report calculates closing the global gender gap has increased from 99.5 years to 135.6 years. In sub-Saharan Africa, where gender parity sits at 67.2%, the gap can be closed slightly quicker in 121.7 years. Evidence outlined in the report suggests that health emergency and the ensuing economic downturn have impacted women more severely than men, amplifying existing gender gaps and partially reopening gaps that had already been closed. This tells us that much needs to be done in order to achieve our aims and objectives. With the array of dynamic executives present from the public and private sector for this occasion, I have no doubt that the outcome of the quality of these discussions today will go a long way in enriching the process of building a strong pipeline of women leaders with key leadership traits to dominate the corporate boardrooms and maintain gender balance in our nation. Finally, I would like to thank all the participants for toying the path of history to write their names in gold towards achieving the quest of upscaling women participation in management. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Ma, for that lovely and very powerful speech. Thank you for, in that speech, I saw, that the work that women have done over the years was highlighted, and that it also showed that a lot of work still needs to be done. Yes, a lot of women are going up the ladder, but a lot of work still needs to be done, especially in this part of the world. Thank you very much, Ma, for sharing that speech with us. We are very grateful. Thank you, Ma. And your concluding statement, in fact, opens the room for the next conversation we'll be having, where the head of service wished that to see more, that women develop more key leadership traits to dominate corporate boardrooms. And we hope that our speaker, Mrs. Atinuke Obikoya, would share also in her conversation how women, what are these traits and how women can develop it and be able to dominate corporate spaces. Thank you once again, Ma, for your speech, Ma. So at this point, I would want to welcome Mrs. Atinuke Obikoya. You're welcome, Ma.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. If you can hear me and you can see me, kindly let me know.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ma. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So once again, good morning, everyone. And let me please permit that I stand on established protocols. And I would just want to say thank you so much to Professor Olasade for the opportunity once again to work with you. It's been a privilege over the years to be able to contribute to what you do, the huge contribution that you make in capacity building and in leadership most especially. I also want to appreciate every other speaker out there and every other participant who is here to learn and share their experiences also. As Loretta said earlier, this is not a monologue. We're not here to lecture people. We're here to also listen to your own experiences and see how do we bridge this gap together. Thank you so much, everyone. So let me start by saying that I'm so excited to be here. I've had a chance to work in a non-governmental organization for women's human rights. And that was where I can say I really started my career from before moving into management consulting and then now becoming a leadership coach. So I have an idea really what gender gaps are. And I'm going to talk just a bit about that before I move on to talk about how can women stay the leadership course. I do believe that you're going to learn certain things that would help your leadership get better and also help you to improve the culture in your respective organizations. So thank you again for having me. I'm going to share my screen so I can just share a few slides that I have. Okay, so I'm not a host. Loretta, am I allowed to share my screen?
I will do that now. Sorry.
Yes, Ma, you can share it now. Ma.
Okay, you can share your screen now.
Please do let me know also, once you can see my screen, I'm going to project so that it gets
Yes,
bigger.
I can see your screen, Ma.
Let's go ahead and project now. Yeah, so we're talking about staying the leadership course. And in the next few minutes that I have, I'm so glad that Mrs. Atinuke that spoke earlier had mentioned the women who have been doing us proud in the corporate world. As a matter of fact, we cannot, how am I going to put it now? If we want to start mentioning names, we're going to really have a long list. There are so many women out there who are doing so much. and making women proud. And I'll just say less about that. So the theme for this year's International Women's Day is breaking the gender bias. I'm sure we know that already. And we're saying a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality, and collectively, we can all break the bias. So when they say collectively, of course, it's not going to leave even the women out. And that's what we are focusing on this morning. If you really want to break the bias, you have to be determined about how you show up. I was having a discussion yesterday during a leadership coaching session, and the person I was coaching is incidentally a woman who has done so much in the corporate world. Said to me, I'm tired of people demanding for seats because they are women. I want to begin to see that people focus on building capacity. So we move beyond just being represented to thinking about, if I'm representing her, what am I bringing to the table? I think all of those things would help us contribute to breaking the bias. So yes, of course, today we're saying gender gap in management. How do we build a strong pipeline of women leaders? And of course, we know by now that gender refers to the economic, social, political, and cultural attributes and opportunities associated with being women or men and men. It's a social construct, that's what we call it. It's something that says, oh, this person can do this because they're male, or because this person is a woman, so this is where she should be. And these are the reasons that we have the gap and the divide as we have them today. So the social definitions of what it means to be a woman or a man vary among cultures. And the beautiful thing is they can change over time. I'm sure we didn't start from here. We had so many challenges before now. Somewhere, even around our country here, we know that some people could not vote. Women were not allowed to vote. We've gone through those phases where being a woman, you could not come into a room, or when the men are talking, you should not have an opinion. Those are some of those things that we've gone through, but we all know that a lot of those things have changed, and women have really done a lot in the past, yes. But what we're saying is it's not enough, and if we don't do something about it, the gap keeps getting wide. So let me ask you, please, I want you to respond to this. You could type your answers in the chat box. What are the factors that make leadership more challenging for women? Of course, we know that leadership and management are not one and the same. So you could find yourself on different levels of management, maybe top management or middle or low, but at every place that you find yourself, you notice that you're leading one way or the other. From your own experiences, could you tell me, or share with us, what makes it more challenging for women? Madam Felicia, you're welcome, ma. I can see some faces that I know, women who have done us proud in the corporate world. Since I'm waiting to hear from you, let's just make this a bit interactive. From your own experience, as a woman, what has made it more challenging for you in your leadership roles? Are we there? Are we thinking about it? Are we typing? Or does it mean it has been rosy? Please tell me if it's been rosy for you. Also let us know, Madam Winifred, I see you're smiling. Has it been rosy? Okay. All right, Madam Florence, thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I stand on existing protocol. I just want to say that thank you for making this a bit interactive. I just want to say that as a woman, a senior official in an establishment, some of the problems I had was perhaps interacting with mainly junior colleagues, male junior colleagues, but sometimes female colleagues as well, who were often reluctant to take instructions from a female boss. In some cases, some junior male colleagues have said to us, you know, I have a wife like you at home. And, completely undermining your position and authority. So that makes it, because of the mindset we have, that men, and sometimes when you pick up somebody, you call somebody's office at the pickup, they start by saying, good morning, sir, even after hearing your voice. So these are some of the debilitating factors in being in senior management. But of course, there is a lot more, but I don't want to take up the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm not sure you spent up to a minute. You said a lot, and you've actually touched on some of the things I was hoping that we would come up with. Yes, so the question about people not wanting to take instructions from you because you're a woman, some will tell you, oh, I don't believe that a woman should be my head. I've had things like that. We can go on and on, you know, talking about those kind of things that we face. I remember going to Dubai for a training. It was a leadership program. If you know me very well, I'm not tall, I'm not very fat. And then I walked into the room, and the men there, of course, they were mostly men, were directors, and they had come for the leadership program. And they said, oh, did you come? When I said, please, let's settle down, let's get started. They said, oh, we thought you came to serve us tea. You know, and then I just smiled, which is one of the things I'm going to talk about. How do you handle the pressure when you get those kind of reactions? Do you go about reacting? If I had decided to react that day, I'm sure I would have lost my element and I really wouldn't have been able to perform. So it's a good place to start. Thank you again, Madam Florence, for bringing us here. I think about last year or the year before, I was working with women in the extractive industries, and I had to do a lot of research to find out the challenges that they face. And what I found out is linked greatly to what Madam Florence has just said. She said, many of them said, when we are on the rig, that's a time that people need support. We're away from home, and then it's challenging to be out there, and we have to generally just look out for one another. And they said, the men do not mind caring for us. The men do not mind supporting us. They don't mind making tea for you. But it becomes a problem when you head the team and you're giving instructions. They don't want to take instructions from us. And this is one of those things that I'm talking about. I'm looking for the right word to use now. It's so easy for your first impulse to be a reaction to people. But I'm going to tell us about how your impulse should be responding to the situation rather than reacting to people. I'm going to talk about that when we talk about competence. I can see some hands up. Please let me be sure. Loretta, your hand is up.
Yes, Ma, I just wanted to draw your attention. There are also 2 responses to your first questions in the comment section. So I wanted you to see it. Yes.
Okay, in the chat box. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, I'm seeing them now. Yes. Muturaya says workplace cultures that place more importance on men than women. Absolutely. And Adedeji says there is this perception that leadership role requires tenacity and women may not be able to cope. I like that. So you think ahead for them, right? And you decide to not give them the position because you feel they may not be able to cope. These are some of the things that we see. Yes, organizations should begin to recognize that women have peculiar methods. Absolutely, that's true. All right, the idea and mindset also that it's inappropriate for a single lady to be a senior manager over a married woman. She said, happening to me. These are really some big challenges. And just ask me, how would anyone feel that, oh, because you're not married, then does it mean that takes my competence away? Or what exactly does that do to me that makes me less able to perform than another person? And then again, if I'm married, you would also go ahead to say, oh, she'll be busy with her children. So where do you place us? How do you want us to survive in this situation? All right. So yes, we can keep talking about the problems, but this morning we want to look at some solutions. And we're saying, how do we stay the leadership course in the midst of all of these challenges that we're describing? Some factors, I'm going to share 3 factors that will help women stay the leadership course. There's so many factors. What you're looking for is staying power. I've seen people take up a position and it gets so tough they have to leave. What you're looking for is staying power. And 3 factors that I'm going to talk about. The first one is competence. I know Oprah Winfrey says, be so damn good at what you do that you cannot be ignored. Be so good at what you do that you cannot be ignored. You know that time that people don't like you, but they need your results. That's what we're talking about. They may not want to be your friend, but you have their solution. So this is where you want to place yourself, competence. Also, I'm going to talk a little about authenticity, okay? And then we'll say, how do you become a force for good? I'm going to talk more about competence and then just a little bit about authenticity and being a force for good. Yes, so we're talking about competence, and many people erroneously always believe that when you're talking about competence, all you need is your technical competence. Loretta, I see your hand up again.
Yes, Ma, your volume is a bit low. Could you increase it?
Okay.
Some people can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
You can just increase your volume a little bit.
Is it better now by any chance? Is it better now?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, I was talking about competence, and I was saying that a lot of people erroneously believe that all the competence you need is your technical competence. That's your ability to get the core tasks done. That's technical competence. But competence is so broad and it's beyond your technical abilities. One of those things that you want to see is that when you're talking about competence, your ability to not react to what people are doing also is a competence. We call it emotional competence under emotional intelligence. Okay, so as I said, beyond technical competence, have you thought about emotional intelligence? These are some of those competencies you need to be able to cope in such a crazy world as ours. Strategic intelligence, the ability to create an enabling environment for your performance to shine through. I'm going to share a personal experience here. I actually joined an organization as a partner, and I also was doubling as a manager. The only difference was the people who I was supposed to manage were not ready to be managed by me, of course, due to some of those reasons that we talked about earlier. I came in as a partner and I was given an office that people had longed to get before I got there. Even the position, we had some people who had longed for that position before I got there. So what that meant was that naturally, not because of any fault of mine, I had enemies, okay? And I was supposed to work in that environment and get results. I know some of us may be going through something like this right now. And then I had to sit and ask myself, do I really have what it takes to work with people who don't like me? If you're a woman in a leadership position, you would know that sometimes people tell you to your face when you're given a position that we're going to see how you would survive. Oh, you think you can come here and take what belongs to us? Only God knows how you got the position. And some people would say these things to your face. What about the people who say, oh, madam, you're welcome. We're so happy for you and we're happy that you're here. Please do not hesitate to call us if you need any help. We're here to support you. We're here to help you succeed. But then as soon as you turn your back, they just laugh and say, I'm going to see how she would last for 2 months. Right? I see some people laughing because they've probably gone through this. And that was my situation. Some people made it clear that, hey, we don't like you. We don't want you to lead us. And some other people will come in as friends, but really they're not your friends. What did I do in that situation? I really had to be very strategic. The first thing I did was to keep my emotions in check. In emotional intelligence, we say that the moment you're overwhelmed by emotions, reasoning flies out through the window. So you're less competent. You really cannot even focus on your job or get the best out of yourself. I put my emotions in check. And then I said, okay, how do I connect to these people? A leader is the leader of everyone. You're the leader of the people who like you and the leader of the people who do not like you. And you have a responsibility to everyone. So when you remind yourself of that, you have to really put things in control. Strategic intelligence helps you to manage how you show up. Sometimes people feel intimidated even by your technical competence, okay? And you really want to know, how do I manage how I show up around here? I'm not saying dim your light, but I'm saying it takes a lot of being strategic to not throw your weight around sometimes and just allow your competence to speak for you. Okay, I'll still share more on that. But the beautiful thing is I was able to succeed in that position until the partner who brought me in could not handle my competence anymore and had to let me go. So that's something else entirely. And of course, if you've been building yourself, you can only move to a higher level if you get thrown out of a place like that. I'm sharing these experiences because I really want us to pick some traits, some abilities that would help us stay the course. Now, I see some concerns that my line is breaking or people cannot hear me. Is this a general problem? I would love to know. Madam Winifred.
I can hear you, Ma. I can hear you clearly.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
I can hear you too. I think the person who said they can't hear you, they could probably join. They could just click on that's the lower button on your screen where you have the mute screen, and then you join. I think it's to give you two options. You pick the option at the top because I can see that on your side there's no mic to show that you'll be able to hear. So just correct that on your side. Hola. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I've also seen a concern that the volume is low, and I just tried to do something about that now, hoping that it gets better. By any chance, am I louder now?
Yes, ma, it's louder and clearer now.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. Yes, so I've shared some experiences and I know that those are relatable for some people in the room. We're talking about competence. Again, there is something that we call the Peter Principle in management. And the Peter Principle simply says that people can be promoted beyond their level of competence. Now, it will not mean that you don't have the technical capacity to get the job done, but if you're not able to work effectively with people, it also would mean that you're not competent to lead or to take that position. And leadership is such a huge task. Leadership is so challenging, and it's not something that you just assume that you can do. People have to be trained and schooled in leadership. This is for those ones who are really committed to learning. So never assume that you can lead. Many leaders fall into the intelligence trap. You fall into this trap when you're unconsciously incompetent. You're not competent, but even you don't know it. That's the intelligence trap. So how do you become self-aware? How do you settle down? I keep talking about it.
Oh, I think that okay. You're muted, Ma.
Thank you so much.
I think your internet was going on. You're welcome.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I'm going to share my screen again and then continue from where I stopped. I was going to talk about a leader who had signed up for a leadership training at some point. He had just been promoted to be a DG, and he signed up and paid for himself to attend the course. And I said, okay, what are you doing here? He said, yes, I've been given the position, but I know I need to learn to be able to deliver. Okay, so it's not something that we take for granted that we can lead. We really must learn how to lead. Yes, I've said this, the most effective leaders anywhere in the world that you go are the ones who realize how much they need to learn. Those are the most effective leaders. They realize how much they need to learn, because you're managing in complexity. You really have to navigate very tough situations, and it takes a lot of competence to do that. Finally, on competence, I would say the lack of competence in critical areas make us react to people rather than respond to situations. If you know what to do, you're not going to react to the people. Rather, you would ask yourself, what do I need to do to make this situation get better? And a response is always better than a reaction. Yes, this reminds me of a woman who had just been promoted at some point. I'll just share a little about her because of time. And someone had told her that, okay, she should go for a leadership coaching session, attend leadership programs. And she told me, she said, Tineke, everybody keeps looking at me as though I don't deserve this position, but I earned it. I earned it, and I'm really going to make them see that I'm supposed to be here. I said, Madam, yes, you earned it. But I would love you to know that on the levels of leadership, positional leadership is the least. When you are a leader because of position, you have it because you have a right to have it. It doesn't mean you're able to function in that office. This is the time to now start to build your skills. You have to move to permission, and you can't do that without building relationships. You have to move to production, where people would respect you, as we said before, because of what you can do, because you can get results. You have to move to people development, where people would follow you because you've helped them, because of the things you've done for them. And of course, John Maxwell would say the pinnacle is where people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. I hope we appreciate this, because I don't have much time left. But in a few time that I have left, I'm just going to make sure that I cover. So if you haven't taken this, I'm sure you can also see this on the replay to see the 5 levels. And no, sometimes you have to lead 2 people. Sometimes you have to lead a team. Sometimes you have to lead a composite team. Sometimes you have to lead an organization. And what you find out is that different competence levels are required for different stages of leadership. But as we always say, personal leadership is the first. They say you cannot give what you don't have. If you can't lead yourself, you really cannot lead other people effectively. Yes, let me talk about being authentic. I'm not going to spend so much time here. Being authentic would mean that you stay true to who you are. Being authentic would mean that you don't get distracted by the things that you see or the challenges that you have. They say consistency is the lifeblood of authenticity, and you cannot sustain what's not authentic. So you must be authentic, you must be true to yourself, and that would first of all mean that you know who you are and you know what you want. I always say this, remain true to your purpose, regardless of challenges. Either you gain or you lose. Don't lose you. When some people gain a position, gain wealth, gain recognition, they just tend to lose who they are. When some people lose also, if they lose a position, they also lose who they are. How can you stay in between? I'll use this illustration. If you look at this clock, you see that there is something about it. It's aligned. And the clock is aligned when it's at 12 o'clock. So in authenticity, we say, keep going back to your 12 o'clock. It's not impossible that you derail. It's not impossible that you lose focus. But the moment you catch yourself and you see that you've lost focus, what do? Go back to 12 o'clock. Say, no, this is not me. If you find yourself in a male-dominated environment and you're beginning to want to be like the men, you have to pinch yourself and say, no, let me go back to my 12 o'clock, because that's the only place you can succeed. People who lose their authenticity, what happens to them? They lose their power. I'm not talking about losing authority, but the personal power that you have to perform, you lose it. And when you do that, you give into insecurity. Trust me, you don't want to walk around an insecure leader. These are some of the challenges that we have. I've talked about competence, I've talked about authenticity, and I'm just going to say that be a force for good. Authenticity alone will not cut it. Some people will tell you this is the real me and that's me. But who they are people who can pop champagne over another person's downfall or even plot someone else's downfall. So we don't want you to have a position and begin to put people down. We want you to have a position as a woman and make us proud and do good for people. I have so many women that I work with in the leadership sphere, and many of them have done good to the point that the men who serve under them would respect them so much. And that alone speaks for you. That alone works for you. When you are forced for good, you're doing it for yourself. I'll round up by sharing the story of my mom who worked. She also had a leadership. She worked as a leader before she retired, and she held several leadership positions. The last one she held, she was a chief nursing officer in a teaching hospital. And shortly, she retired as a chief nursing officer. Shortly after retirement, she fell ill and she had to be admitted back to the hospital where she retired. Now, you can imagine what that would mean if she didn't lead well, if she didn't help people. Everyone rallied around her and she was only able to survive because of the massive help that she got. One of those days, she lay down on the hospital bed with tears in her eyes, seeing how people were all over her. She said, she held my hand, I can't forget. She said, Tinuke, anywhere you find yourself, please be good to people. She said, I didn't have money to give these people, but I just encouraged them. I supported them. I made life better for them. And look at where I am today. Did I ever think I would come back to this position? I hope that with these few points of mine, I've been able to share some points that can help you stay the course as a woman. If you ever find yourself maybe leading teams or leading an organization, we've talked about competence. Be so good that you can't be ignored. Let people want your results, even if they don't like your face. We've talked about being authentic. Always go back to your 12 o'clock. Remain true to your purpose. If it's not authentic, it can be sustained. You really will not have staying power. And be a force for good. Nobody will resist good, okay? Even if they resist it initially, they will come to accept you later on. So for the leader, you find out that learning never ends. Be committed to lifelong learning. be committed. If you're committed, you would give it what it takes. If you're interested, you do what's convenient. But when you're committed, you give it what it takes. And I'll close by saying, never find yourself living without learning. Learning makes the difference in your leadership. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that very insightful session. Thank you. I really appreciate that you shared your experience, and you also mentioned the fact that, you know, for us as women, we shouldn't just fight to be on the table, but we should build the necessary competence that we need to be there. And I also liked that you mentioned two strategic or two important intelligences that as women we should have, or even as anybody really should have, to be able to go up to, you know, management level, and that is strategic intelligence and emotional intelligence. And women have been known a lot of time to maybe break down or try to use their emotions to, you know, do certain things. But I see that it's a big skill that every woman or every person should try to develop. I would like that we take questions, but we're really running out of time. So I'm hoping that after the panel session, we can take questions concerning your session. I hope that you'll be able to stay through to that time. So anyone, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box. And once the next session is completed, we'll go ahead to take all your questions. So please keep dropping them in the comment section. So at this point, I will be moving on to the panel session, which will be moderated by the group communications executive, Winifred Obam, and she'll be speaking with our panelists who are very equipped to take on this conversation on organizational culture and women's growth. At this point, I would like to introduce Ambassador Sonia Alana and Mrs. Uche Lotana Adejemba for the panel session. Welcome.
Okay, good morning everyone. Good morning, Ma. Thank you for joining us for this session. Mrs. Atinuke, thank you very much for that, your session. It was quite enlightening, and I wish you stay to the end so that we can get questions, because I believe we'll have questions. In this session, we'll be discussing organizational culture and women's growth, and how organizational culture can help or hinder women in ascending to senior management levels and into leadership positions. So joining us, as you can see today, is Ambassador Sonia Alana, former career diplomat with vast experience in diplomatic protocol, ethical practice, and she's also a certified etiquette image consultant and public speaker. You're very much welcome, Ma.
Thank you.
Okay. With us also here is a business leader, strategist, and social enterprise entrepreneur, Mrs. Uche Adejemba, who is currently the HR director at Seplat Energy. You're very much welcome, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, but let me correct, I'm not the HR director at Seplat.
Sorry about that.
But in line with the conversation, we will get there eventually.
Okay.
I had HR for operations and technical for Seplat Energy.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you very much for the correction, Ma. Okay, so going forward in the discussion, we'll, no matter how we talk about women growing, we also know that culture plays like a huge part, organizational culture plays a huge part in women growth. And I would just like us to, first of all, Ambassador Alana, I would like to ask how organizational culture has played a huge part in your career, how it has influenced your career growth up to this point, rather.
Thank you very much, and top of the morning still to everyone. Really a pleasure to be here. And yes, well, you know, what do they say now? We are trying to bridge the gender gap. Organizational culture globally is still an issue. And as it happens, I have been in industries that have been termed to be male industries. When I started my career as a diplomat, as in the Nigerian Foreign Service, it was a male-dominated arena. As a matter of fact, when I went for my interview, my interviewers then did everything to dissuade me from joining foreign affairs. I was told that ladies in foreign affairs have a bad reputation. They don't marry, they don't settle down. Is your husband going to follow you? It's not likely, and all of that. So when you talk about organizational culture, it is still very much influenced by the social culture of your environment. And not even just, I'm not just narrowing it down to Nigeria, but I'm talking global. Because if you look at in the global arena, even at that time, and I joined the Foreign Service in the early 80s, female ambassadors were still very few and far between. So if you take the ratio, it was really very, very few. Why? Because there's a perception of where the woman should be. There's a perception of what the woman should do. And by the time I joined the oil and gas industry, the same thing all over again. It was a male-dominated environment. I was told that, we are technical. Every time what I hear is, this is a technical industry, it's a technical industry. And people just assume that because it's technical, it should be male. Hello, why? Why? And I really love what the previous speaker said. I mean, she has so many things that I wrote down. I can't speak to all of them. Madam Atinuke, beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Many of the things resonated with me. Many of the things I went through. There is a resentment when a male colleague sees a competent female. So my question really is, how do we get the men to stop feeling threatened by women in whatever industry? Because it's a real threat. And I have been on the rigs, and I know what it is. When she alluded to the fact on the rigs. Number one, on one of our rigs, there were no female cabins. It was just assumed that it's men only. So by the time we had female engineers go on the rig, they had to share bunks with their male counterpart. There were no female toilets. And I'm talking about an international, about a multinational organization. I'm not talking about the Nigerian small little company. So it's not bad. And then there's a certain resentment they feel, even no matter how competent you are, they always feel that they need to prove that you are not as competent as you really are. So it's a struggle. And believe me, I had that struggle until I retired. Yeah. So the struggle is real. It's real. It is there. It is not imagined. Oh, and yes, and by the time I joined the oil and gas sector, I did ask, because I was headhunted. I was working, obviously, I was with Foreign Affairs, and I was headhunted from there. And I did ask, I said, I'm coming in at senior management level. Wouldn't there be resentment, within the organization that where is this one coming from nowhere? She just came, and as Madam Atinuke said, that people had been aspiring, had been in the organization for years, maybe even decades, hoping to assume that position. And then somebody comes from outside and a woman, hello, and she's taking that position. So what's going to happen? Yeah. And my boss then said, well, there's one thing that nobody can argue with, and that is the experience and the contacts you bring to the table. Because I came with a wide network, and of course, at the highest level, nobody could argue with that. But even at that, there were some grumblings, and I tell you that those grumblings persisted until I left. Mrs. Alana knows everyone, and Mrs. Alana knows everybody, Mrs. Alana knows everybody, and they resented it. So I was a door opener for the company. They could get to anywhere at any time. They could see the president at any time. It was not a problem. I could even give and I did that on one occasion. I gave my MD the president's telephone number when there was an emergency, and he actually called and spoke with the president. I mean, who could do that? But yet there was a resentment that why? So, and at one point I had a boss that wanted to prove that he's in charge, he's the boss. It was not, there was no contest, it was not in contention at all, but he just felt that he had to prove that he was better than Mrs. Alana. But even taking that outside, even in the social, in the social space as well. I know we are actually focusing on what's happening in the corporate space, but it has an effect on what happens socially. Because, for example, in the oil and gas industry, golf is an industry sport. golf is considered an industry sport. So most people, in fact, in most oil companies, they pay for your membership at top management level. They pay for your membership in the golf club and etc. Yes, we have female golfers and all that now, but you know, golf initially was an all-male sport. So it's still a question of how dare you enter the male club, even so many days, so many years after, or so many decades after. It's like, what kind of encroachment is that? And I was reminded that golf was actually an acronym for gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. So I think I leave it here for now.
Wow, this is the first time I'm hearing about that. I will actually look it up. And you know, it's funny, in as much as we're growing, the last year at least the finance sector saw growth of women in the industry, but some sectors are still lacking behind. Like, even it's funny that even a company as Shell celebrated the first ever female MD in 2021, and we're supposed to be growing. So Mrs. Ucha, I would like you to actually comment on that. How do you see these organizational cultures, should I say, limiting, hindering women's growth, and how has it, maybe share like a personal experience, how it has either hindered yours or helped yours in your course of your career? Your mic.
Okay. Can you hear me now? All right, great.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Winifred, and good day, Ambassador. Let me stand on established protocols, and that is such a valid question. Organizational culture really is about the totality of how we do things, right? In an organization, our practices, our beliefs, our policies, our systems. But culture is something that should be transient. It's not supposed to be static. Over the years, I think, especially in Africa or developing economies, right? There's always the cultural backdrop that a woman is supposed to be a homemaker. She's supposed to stay at home and take care of the children, while a man is supposed to go and bring in the money. However, we've actually found, statistically, that women are more likely to get into a job, but less likely to rise through the ranks, right? And that's purely because people want to hire people at maybe junior levels, not pay top dollar for that skill. So you come in, you have the efficiency of a woman who already she's multi-talented, and that's the truth. Women are very multi-talented and able to take on many things at the same time. They're able to juggle their marriage, their home, women's communities, and the workplace, but they're very unwilling to help, for you to rise through the organization. So unfortunately, our culture has seeped into our corporate environments. So when we see a woman, instead of looking at her in the totality of her competence, I love what Atinuke said about competence. She spoke about so many things. Instead of looking at her, the totality of her competence and what she brings to the table, we start thinking of her almost as that homemaker. And so you would find that women are then relegated to traditional roles like admin. So it's a woman you send to go and buy cake when it's someone's birthday. And it's not like there's anything wrong in that, but in your mind, you don't see her as anything. You don't take that transferable skill to say the fact that she's a good administrator also means that when she's in leadership, she doesn't have to have all the technical competencies like she spoke about, right? Anybody at all, at the top, what are you looking for? You're looking for leadership. You're looking for ability to influence. You're looking for ability to galvanize the people to performance. You're looking for ability of somebody who's able to take a corporate vision and interpret it into the work that needs to be done. Those are the things you ought to be looking at. So you don't see those transferable skills, and unconsciously, our culture then seeps into organizational culture, and you keep women limited. So I would have conversations with hiring managers, and they would say, oh, this job will be very demanding, would have a lot of time off-site. She's young, she just got married, she should stay and tend to her home. And I'm saying to them, hang on, do you realize that now it's been shown that up to 40% of women are actually the breadwinners of their home? So that's something a lot of people are not considering. So while you are limiting this woman from rising into management positions, right, and making more money, you forget that she might actually be the breadwinner of her home. Perhaps her husband has not been able to get a job, right? Perhaps her husband is doing a business and the business is not as profitable or flourishing at that point in time, and they're actually reliant on her. So you're looking at her as, oh, I've had someone actually say to me, what do you need the money for? Your husband will take care of you. And I was like, yes. And I was like, amazing. You don't know my family circumstances. You don't know, the details of it. What does my marital status or my husband's ability to take care of me have to do with the fact that I am qualified for this job and I should be given the rightful place that I deserve? So if we're going to actually make any progress, right, we need to get to the place where as leaders, and this is regardless of whether we're male or female, because there are three, when I think about bias, when I think about gender bias, right, I think about it in two ways. There's the bias that comes from, the organization, right, no specific on gender, just by virtue of the culture of an organization. But there's also the bias that comes from even the women themselves. So again, we come and we start to say, oh, I have a husband, I have children, I don't think I can take on this job. And speaking from personal experience, this was me in the heydays of my career. I was heading commercial operations for an organization, running into, billions of revenue, jet setting everywhere to make business happen. And once I got married, I did a switch into human capital. Now, I don't regret it because I believe that was the right place for me. Eventually, I may have found my way there eventually, but I went there because I believed it was expected of me to have a job that allowed me the time to be available to my husband and my children. So unconsciously, I created a bias for myself. So if you by yourself have perpetrated a bias, it's easy for somebody else to then validate the bias that you have created. So if an opportunity came, I would turn it down because already I created a bias. Do you understand? So there is the general bias, and there's the bias that we women also put on ourselves because of expectations of society.
Yes, I think this whole cultural thing and the bias is just, should I say, is embedded inside of us. So it has to take like a conscious effort to actually break the bias, because like you said, we unconsciously put ourselves in that bias. So women tend to, okay, let me go for more admin roles since I'm a woman, it's more easy and not technical. I think even to now, so you hear statements like that is a very technical role. Can you do that? So I just want to, Ambassador Ma, I want to ask, how were you able to, grow? Like you said, when you got into foreign affairs, there were questions and concerns about, having time for your family and all. But how were you able to, at that point where you joined, grow your career and take on more responsibilities because of these concerns and organizational limitations, or sometimes unconscious culture that have been brought into place? They tend of not giving women more responsibilities. So how are we able to break that and show that, okay, you are able to take on more responsibilities despite your family and you being a woman?
Yes, well, it started first and foremost with a conversation that I had with my husband, because in foreign affairs, number one, in those days, I don't know whether it's still the same, they wouldn't even post you without your husband's consent. Your husband would have to give a written consent. And they would not give our husbands diplomatic passports, but they would give our male counterparts, they would give their wives diplomatic passports. So there was a lot of discriminatory practice. But then how I managed, something has to give, and that's the truth. And there were a lot of sacrifices that I made. For example, when I was at my, it was not my first post, but when I was in Senegal, and of course we were in a foreign country, I had two little children. No, I had three children by then. Yes, I had three children, and I was the head of Chancery. Now the head of Chancery is the head of admin, and our mission was concurrently accredited to Cape Verde, yes, to Cape Verde as well. But the diplomatic bag had to be gotten from Cote d'Ivoire, and the head of Chancery had to travel to Cote d'Ivoire every time to go and get the diplomatic bag, and that fell on me. So what I had to look for is a competent nanny, because my last one, I think, was about 18 months at the time. I had to look for a competent nanny that could take care of the children while I was at work. And what I did then really was to just literally put my last one on the nanny, because what I could not afford was a clinging child. Yes. So but there was something that I instituted straight away, and which stayed with me right up till the time I retired. And that is official things were official and home was home. And there was a clear dividing line. In the office, you do not call me from the house to say that the salt has finished, there's no Maggi, we need one thing, Pampas or whatever. You do not call me, except it's a matter of life and death. And they knew you cannot call me in the office for any domestic matter. And when once I'm at home, I would dedicate I will not carry files home. I will not take official calls. I will not, except again, it was an emergency. So home was home. So there was this clear dividing line. And people knew you cannot call me first thing in the morning for a chit chat to say, well, I was just calling to say, how are you? I just wouldn't have it. So I dedicated my time to the working hours, and the people knew that I was justifying my pay by putting in everything, during the working hours. And then again, I knew that if you cannot be faulted on your work, there's very little they can fault you on. And yeah. I made sure I went the extra mile. I went the extra mile. I made sure that everything in the evening, it was, to the extent that even I would get to, like, when we have a presidential visit or something, I would even get vitamin C or this effervescent, what do you call those things, vitamins, to get, to even keep my boss going, down to that. So you could not fault me on official matters. You could not fault me. So with that, definitely. And then of course we had promotion exams, and with the promotion exams, I mean, you can't pass and they will say they will not promote you. Yeah, so wow. that also was, part of it. And again, by the time I joined the private sector, I had formed a culture, and I'm extremely, and I believe in professionalism. So I do not discuss my family in the office. I don't have pictures even of my children or whatever. I just kept my home separate from the office completely. So I was totally professional, and you cannot fault that. So I was not bringing emotions in. I was not. So people never knew, except my secretary. Sometimes my secretary would say to me, she said, "Madam, nobody would ever know that, what is happening. Maybe let's say I had a child sick or something that happened the previous night. You would not know it in the office." And my secretary said, "Madam, I want to be like you, because nobody would see it on your face. Nobody would see what, even down to the time that my husband died, people didn't even know. I was still carrying on and whatever. It was only later they said, what? What happened? Because, it was something that had built up over time, and people are just shocked. They said, it's impossible, and okay. And so that was that. So it was just keeping my home affairs totally separate from the office. So I think that was my strategy.
Okay, I think professionalism comes to a big play there. So women trying to separate, and so it's essential for women to separate, should I say, their home from work. So that way they are not saying like, how will I put it, this is the weak person in quotes at the office, and she's always complaining about her home. So why we just take a look at the chat box. So, okay, we have people. If you have any questions for Ambassador or for Mrs. Uche, kindly drop it on the chat box. And while we're waiting for the questions, I would like to ask you, Mrs. Uche, considering you're in HR, how can organizations build their culture in a way that it will allow growth without the gender bias? So like how would that, okay, go on, please.
That is such a good question. I was actually hoping you would ask that, because we want to leave here with some things to do, especially if we have people that, run organizations, own organizations, or at leadership level. And I think the first one I would say is policies, right? When we create policies, we need to be very, very, intentional about how we write the policies. I have heard of organizations where they would say, as you're not allowed to take maternity leave in the same year as a leave. So that means if a woman is pregnant, even if she's sick and unwell, because unfortunately, not every woman is able to go through a stress-free pregnancy, she would struggle and come to work every day because she's trying to save the 3 months maternity. And the 3 months is basically the minimum here in Nigeria. Thank God the civil service is actually starting to do better and have, give better months. But those kind of policies are very discriminatory, and from the beginning are already showing that you are creating a difficult enabling environment for a woman to thrive. So you want to ensure that your policies are factoring in things like your leave is separate, your leave, maternity leave, it doesn't have anything to do with each other, and a woman should be able to take take that up. The second one as well is, unfortunately, because of this kind of gender bias, some women are now having to become very strong advocates in the unions, right? So you find organizations are starting to unionize if they believe that the organization is not fair enough to actually create fairness and equity. So by virtue of unionization, you would then find collective bargaining agreements, which basically means it doesn't matter what your name is, where your tribe is, what your gender is, right? If this is the barest minimum that should be paid to you for this particular role. And the truth is that I always like to tell organizations, build your organization in such a way that you don't need the union to come and do the work for you. If you're proactive about taking care of your people and keeping to your word, what you said you will do, you don't need an outsider organization to come and force you to do the right things, right? So some organizations are now having to unionize to help to create this fairness and equity. So another thing also that I also generally just advise women to do is that when nobody's going to hand anything to you, you've got to negotiate. You have to have your facts and figures and information available to you when you're going into an organization. And so when you're negotiating, you want to make sure that you're asking for the right money for the role, for what you're bringing to the table, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't, they're going to offer you the barest minimum that they can. And that in itself already creates that gap. It's actually been shown statistically that the variance over a lifetime between a man and a woman's pay comes to an average of $430,000. That is a lot of money. That can buy you a 5-bedroom house, in let's say in the United States, and here in Nigeria, that can buy you a lot of real estate or anything else you want to use your investment for. So organizations want to come to the place where there is equity. It has nothing to do with gender. When the hiring managers on HR in particular is making offers, you need to sort of come away from that bias and offer people what is required, what they deserve. Then I want to speak to diversity and inclusion, and I'm just going very quickly because I know we don't have time again. Diversity and inclusion has now become a thing, right? Organizations are starting to pay a bit more attention to D&I and just saying, create an enabling environment for women to thrive within the organization. And so when we think about D&I now, we usually think about the women in particular, especially in this part of the world. But what's the point of diversity without inclusion? So if you take the woman, the token woman, and sprinkle her into the mix, just so that you can demonstrate that you have a woman, but you don't create an enabling environment like Ambassador, Alana spoke about, going to the rig, and the rigs were they didn't even factor in female toilets. They didn't even factor in female accommodation. So now they would say, we are diverse. We have X number of women working for us. But hang on, those women are not being given an enabling environment to operate. So the truth is, whether or not you like it, they might start to turn down those kind of opportunities. And if those opportunities are the things that give them the edge to go into management positions, somebody would then say, oh, they don't have field experience. They don't have practical experience. They only know theory. You see where I'm coming from? So diversity without inclusion means you actually create an enabling environment for that woman to actually thrive. So organizations need to stop paying lip service to it and be very focused and intentional. So I'll give you an example. If you say you're pushing a D&I agenda, but then you have, we're now, whether or not we like it, COVID has brought the future of work to the present. So now it's no longer a distant thing, it's here. So you say you're a D&I organization, but then you say you must have people turn up 100% to the office, right? Forgetting that, again, culturally, because women are the ones that are nurturers, it would be nice to have some flexible days, flexi time. A child is sick, right? My son can be ill through the night. In the next morning, I will dress up and I'll come to work. But if let's say, for example, I work in an organization where there's flexibility, I can work from home the next day. He's by my side somewhere. I'm doing my work, but he's there, right? I'm not worrying about his health, but I'm still delivering. My mind is at peace and I can deliver the best work possible. And I think the final thing I would say is women's network. Organizations need to actually promote women's network, because if you have a woman's network, then I find that unconsciously the organization is a bit careful with how women are treated, because you know that there's a watchdog, there's a police that is looking out and saying, hang on, was this woman treated fairly? Is there diversity in this project or in this department? Are women truly being given opportunities? Can we bandy around this person and help them to fight this case? If there's a case of sexual harassment or bullying or intimidation, there are other voices that can arise and say, hang on, I've been part of it, right? I've actually experienced this thing she's speaking, she's not alone. So if we're truly committed to building organizations, right, where women can step into leadership positions, we need to put in place all of these things to create an enabling environment. And because it's been proven that women actually outperform men once they are taken care of. It has been proven. right? Hard facts and figures. And I think the final thing I want to say is there's something that Dr. Losade said, and I totally agree. He said that gender bias should be a disciplinary issue. And I completely agree with him. The reason I do is because it's not a male versus female fight. It's because you have denied the organization the opportunity to find the best talent available for a particular role because of a bias that you have. So today it might be a woman you do it to. Tomorrow it might be a tribe you do it to. Next tomorrow, it might be an age you do it to. At the end of the day, the organization is the one who's worse off because they don't have the best talent they can find within the space because of our biases. So let's learn to do better.
Oh, thank you very much. That was so insightful. I have some points down, and we would like to take this conversation on and on. I'm sure everyone here is enjoying it, but we are way behind our time. So Ambassador Alanama, I would like you to just give your final remarks before I invite our group managing director.
Well, I totally agree with what Uche just said. And I must say, in my previous organization, we had both a women's organization, you know, it was called a Total Women for Communication and Exchange. And then we also had a creche at all the locations. So that, you know, began to really help. And what my final word really would be, let the approach be holistic from the organization, from the woman, and from the men. We all have to work together to make this work, because it is not that it's not war against the men, and it's not a women's lip thing, but it is how can we make everything better so we can work together to we have a better organization, a better community, and a better life ultimately. Because in the end, it will be a win-win situation and we all will benefit. So it's a collective struggle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you for being a part of us. We hope this conversation continues. I would just like to invite my JMD, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I don't have anything else to say, but just to thank the speakers who have shared their experiences, but also giving us some thoughts around how interventions can be made. I think I was going to talk about that system approach and being deliberate in our intervention, creating the enabling environment. I think it's been well spoken. I couldn't say anything better than that. And about trying to address it, not just from, I know the first presentation talked more about how the women can do better and organize themselves. I think that is fantastic, but also it's important not to force a woman into a position where they have to make their way to force their way to the top. So the organization needs to address that. I think when men, it's been said, show ignorance by undermining competence because of a gender, I think that needs to be addressed. On the way from a conference a few months ago, I had a conversation with the Minister for Women's Affairs. And one of the things she was saying was exactly what we heard today. So I think we need to raise this conversation. And I'm actually ashamed that we always keep it to 90 minutes, and we have to, because webinars can go on for too long if we don't manage them. But I think we will have another session where we'll bring in not just the Minister for Women and the head of services we've had today, but also some of people from the corporate sector, the MDs and chairmen, who need to do something and show. It's not just about tokenism, it's about actually acting. I want to thank you also for giving your time, speakers and my colleagues in the office. It's been a fantastic session. We will write up the comments and the questions. There were many questions we haven't answered, and we will continue to keep this conversation going. The speech that was read on behalf of the head of service, we will make that available. I know some people added some comments against that. And if people who have presented today can also share their materials with us, we'll put that into a document and circulate that. So thank you very much. Fantastic session this morning. We'll keep having this 90 minutes webinar session every couple of weeks. You'll know about the next one. Maybe I'll let Loretta let us know if there's the next one coming up, tackling different issues. But again, thank you. Have a fantastic weekend. a blessed time with your family, and really have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.